Yeah, yeah.
Okay, hello, hello, hello. This is Samuel Archer, your host for the Muzilog magazine podcast. And we have a special guest in the building today. He goes by the name of Heshima Moja, and we would like to welcome him and talk about whatever it is that's going on in his life. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you. It's great to be here. I really appreciate you having me on. Uh,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah. We were chopping it up a little bit earlier and just kind of, getting to know each other a little bit and talking
Yeah,
about what's going on in the world. I mean, we
yes,
just had
yes.
quite a day here in New York City. You know, things were shaking and moving a little bit. You know,
Yeah, yeah. How was that for you? Where were you when that happened?
sitting under underground. So in a
Oh,
subway
okay. So
tunnel.
you really felt you really felt the feeling.
Yeah, like the old song said, I felt the earth move under my feet. As
Ooh.
but then the thought of that subway tunnel moving too much was a little bit unnerving.
Uh,
Let's put it that way.
well, thank God everything worked out all right, and
Thank God.
everyone is safe and sound. Shout out to the New York folks, the New Jersey folks that got a little shook. Just have a little
Yeah.
beer later on, smoke a little something, you'll be okay. Hallelujah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. So we just, I want to shout out James Woodbay Lewis from the Urban Influencer for making this possible.
Yes.
And he sent out a song this week.
Mm,
And you are the guy behind the song. And it's a very, very
I
important
am.
song. So why don't you introduce the song to the audience today?
Sure. So I just last week released my second single from my forthcoming album, The Healing Suite. And
Mm,
the name of this single is titled "What Would You Do?"
yes.
And when I originally wrote the song during the pandemic,
Hmm.
actually the day after George Floyd was murdered, uh,
Mm,
I wrote the song and I had titled it "What Would You Do?" and then in parentheses a question to white America. So really,
mm,
this song was meant to provoke some thought.
hmm,
You
hmm,
know, Samuel, I think that human beings, the easiest thing for us to do is dismiss people's suffering and people's reality because things don't seem to be directly affecting us.
hmm,
We don't
hmm,
feel like it's on our doorstep. And having watched everything that's led up to George Floyd, all
hmm,
of the murders of black men and women up to that point, not just within the 2 years prior, but as a historian, because I am a historian,
hmm,
thinking about the lives of all of the black men and women who had been taken since
hmm,
the inception, since the birth of this country, and the ways in which America, particularly those who are considered white by
hmm.
the politically constructed racial classifications that exist here in the United States.
I never heard it like that before, but
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, so the thing is, right, that race.
Hmm, hmm,
A lot of people talk about race as a social construct. I talk about it as a power construct, and there's a
hmm,
long history which we don't really have time to get into here. But the
hmm,
short
hmm,
the short story, or the long story made short, is that after the Emancipation Proclamation, when white politicians wanted to return America to its former
hmm,
glory, particularly the South, in something called
hmm,
the Redemption Campaign, they took
mm,
the old racial science of the Enlightenment period from France and from Germany, where the eugenics movement had started, which, for
mm,
those who don't know, is the ways in which scientists started to classify people's races by physical features. right? And so politicians here in the United States took those classifications, those ideologies, that research, and I always use that pejoratively, and they made legal or created legal classifications for race in order to be able to justify passing Jim Crow laws, black codes, freedmen's laws, all of those things, in order to uphold a racial hierarchy. So when I say power construct and race, I'm talking about the construction of race in order to maintain a hierarchy of white supremacy, right? So the song "What Would You Do" asks the question. I mean, the opening line in the song is, "What would you do if it was happening to you? What if it was your son or daughter who couldn't breathe and who was begging from mama? Then tell me the truth. What would you want others to do? Would you want them to stand idly by while you or your loved ones died, hung from a noose?" And that could be a literal noose or the figurative noose of a police officer's knee on someone's neck, right? And so essentially the song is meant to ask people to not think about this from a legal standpoint, not even from a moral or religious standpoint, right? But from a human standpoint. From through the lens of empathy. Because for me, and I'm sure it's similar for you, Samuel, I can't imagine watching someone die on television and say, "Well, I'm gonna go make a ham sandwich now."
No, not at all.
And just brush that thing off. Whether we're talking about George Floyd or Sandra Bland or Philando Castile or the people dying in Gaza or anywhere, or apartheid, or any type of situation where the dignity of human beings is being sacrificed, literally and figuratively speaking. How can we watch that? And the ways that we're desensitized to say, well, it's not happening to me, so I don't really want to hear about it. And then we get into conversations about privilege, right? Privilege to be able to say, I choose not to deal with that today. Well, that's a very cold and unempathetic way of viewing the world, because it presupposes that we're somehow separate, when the reality is that science shows us
that we're together,
that we are all interconnected beings on this planet, and that the only reason your skin color might be slightly different than mine is because somewhere in your ancestral lineage, folks needed melanin to preserve their body, and the folks in my lineage who maybe 300 years ago, maybe my ancestors looked differently because the body changes, right?
Climate and so on.
Physiology changes, migratory patterns. I don't mean to get into like a college
lecture.
But I told you that before we were talking, I'm kind of a nerd, so I lean into my nerdiness.
That's okay.
But as an artist, I come from the tradition of the artist, scholar, warrior. So for me, my idols, Max Roach, John Coltrane, Archie Shepp, these were Harry Belafonte. These were not just artists; these were scholars. And so for me, my mentors taught me that I had a responsibility, particularly because the areas that I create in are what would be considered Black music. And clearly, according to the racial hierarchy, I'm not defined as Black. So therefore, I have a responsibility to look deeply into these questions, to understand the lives and the realities of the people who have created the music that I now live from, right? That I benefit from. And so when we start to look at these ideas of racial hierarchy, it's easy for people also, because of the improper ways that history is taught in our country. People tend to believe that something that happened 200 years ago or 300 years ago or 400 years ago has no bearing on what is in existence today, in our reality today. And that's the furthest thing from the truth,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so this song, what would you do, is saying, I need you to ask the question.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
as you ask the question, there's a saying in Zen Buddhism that to ask why is the way.
mm-hmm,
We're on the path
mm,
asking the question. If you're curious, so if you don't understand, and for those in your audience who might not understand this question, here's the basic principle that I operate from. Maybe you don't understand why people continue to talk about racism in 2024. Be curious enough to say, I don't understand why. Why is it?
mm-hmm.
And then you do the work to go down the rabbit hole and begin to understand some of the things that you've never been taught, that you have to uncover, some of the legacies and histories that have been stolen, and some of the
Mm,
histories that have been distorted, all intentionally for the purpose of creating some myth, right? James Baldwin said Americans can't handle too much truth. They prefer myth, they prefer myth and legend. And his statement to follow it up was, if you have any doubt, then just spend about 20 minutes watching an American television program, right? And you'll see the
mm,
sheer insanity of these myths.
mm,
But the myths help us to continue to feel okay about where we live. And so then we can come up with statements like, well, you know what? Yeah, things are rough here, but it's still better than anywhere else in the world because we live in the
mm-hmm,
greatest
mm-hmm.
country in the world, right? This
Yeah.
idea of American exceptionalism, where you need myths and you need legends to help you support that idea. And
Mm.
so I'm asking people through my music, in particular this song, What Would You Do, which just dropped last week. So it's available even
Yes.
if you don't want to buy it, which I encourage you to do, because you can't even get a cup of coffee for 99 cents, let's be honest. But for 99 cents, purchase the song. But if you don't want to purchase it and you want to listen first, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it everywhere. Listen to the song and allow the song to guide you through a process of becoming curious again about the realities of other people and about the ways that we really do have a responsibility to preserve human dignity. And so the song What Would You Do is asking people to be empathetic, to develop that muscle, because empathy is a muscle. Emotional
Mm,
intelligence, emotional awareness is a muscle. And if things are, the great Nina Simone said, it's the job of the artist to tell the truth about what's happening in their
yes.
time.
Yeah.
And if that truth makes a person uncomfortable, then that in and of itself should lead us to ask the question, as intelligent beings and as people most who claim to have some type of spiritual belief system, why is this making me uncomfortable?
Mm,
If it's making me uncomfortable, why is that? Now, most people just choose to distract themselves and watch some ridiculous television program. Other people choose to use substances to distract themselves. There are, however, that there's that percentage of the population that gets curious and says, why in the world am I feeling this way about what I'm hearing, about what I'm
mm-hmm,
seeing? And
mm-hmm.
when you start to go down that path of curiosity and leaning into the discomfort, which is what art should make us do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then we're stepping onto a path of understanding those who we have been lied to and told are different from us, who we have been told are somehow either inferior or superior to us, depending on where we think we are on this hierarchical scale.
Mm-hmm.
And this music should, if you really, really take the time to listen to it, um, it should evoke many feelings, right?
So before we run away, because
Yes.
you did give us a really good
I know
give
I
us a
just gave
good
you like
chunk
a
to
mini, a
start with.
mini, mini dissertation. Right.
Like a
Sorry about
documentary we'd have. That's okay. No apologies needed here.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's just great to have the artist just express. We can do that at Musilog. So in terms of the music, because it's not just how the words are written and how it's sung,
Sure.
but I like the musicianship that accompanies the presentation or the whole recording. What was the approach for that? Now, are you playing all the instruments, or did you have musicians come in and help? What was the process with that?
Well, thank you. So that's a great question. The process musically, or as a composer, as an arranger,
Hmm.
was understanding that I come from a really traditional jazz background. You know, I came
Hmm.
from the Miles Davis, John Coltrane background, and for many years that's the line that I towed.
Mm.
But recognizing that, first of all, the music world has changed, right? Very few people, there are some, but very few people can sit and listen to a 10, 12, 13-minute song like in the days of Miles Davis and in the days of John Coltrane.
Yeah, yeah.
That's number one. You're not going to get any radio airplay for that. But number two, wanting to create music that paid homage to those influences, but at the same time is asking us to also look forward. So when I thought about it as a writer, when I originally wrote it during the pandemic, I was in my apartment with my roommate and with a piano. And I sat at the piano, and honestly, it came out like a Donny Hathaway song at first. It
Mm.
was it was very much just piano, very soulful, almost churchy, right? And when I got into the studio and began to work with my collaborative partner, engineer, who really offers a lot in terms of production as well, Edwin Ramos, he said, "How can we shape this?" Because there's songwriting, there's the art of
Hmm.
just writing the song, but then there's song crafting,
Yes.
arranging. And so I wanted to create a haunting, melancholy vibe to really drive that emotion home based on the theme of the song. So I played piano on the song. I mean, I'm a bass player. So for those who don't know, I'm a bass player and vocalist primarily. But
Hmm.
as a composer, I have to play piano quite often. So I decided to play piano on this.
Hmm.
Um, and then I allowed Edwin to do something that for me is very rare. I don't like sampled instruments, but I made a decision and said, Edwin, lay down something on drums. Use some drum samples that really punch, that
Hmm.
create a really powerful throbbing effect. To think about almost if a person was contemplating these subjects all the time, how you would get a headache from the pounding constancy and you know intensity of the subject matter. But then I balanced that out with very arpeggiated guitar,
Hmm.
and then I brought in a great trumpet player who I was honestly working with for the first time, but I had heard play. His name is Emmanuel Rivera,
Okay.
and who said, Emmanuel, be very vocal, act as if you're crying, act as if you're responding to the lyric,
Mm.
right? So there's the conceptual way in which sometimes we can lean into writing versus writing very specific things, because I could have written out a very specific trumpet line for him to play, but I
Hmm.
wanted his emotion. And
Yes.
Emmanuel is a dad, and Emmanuel's son is very young. He's only about I think 4 years old. So his
Okay.
his baby is small. So I said, hey man, listen to the words and imagine it's your son.
Mm.
Be emotional,
Wow.
right? Allow the
Wow.
emotion of what it would feel like to know that your son was in danger.
Mm.
Um, and so he laid two beautiful trumpet tracks down. One was a very open, kind of unmuted trumpet, and then was another one was with what we call an arm in mute, which if you've ever seen Miles Davis play, it's that looks like a plug, like a plunger at the front of the
Yes.
trumpet,
Yes.
and it creates a very nasally sound, which we used, and then when Edwin began to mix, and then we brought in an amazing singer to do backgrounds, Alicia Foreman, who just really, really, really sweetened. For me, she added the love on the track. It was the sweetness in her
Yes,
voice,
yes, yes, yes.
the soothing, almost kind of mantra-like quality of her voice, right? And so
Mm,
all of those elements, for me, I tend to equate writing a song to painting a picture, to painting.
yes,
So I
yes,
so
yes.
I actually call what I do sometimes sonic painting. That's what I call my
Mm,
craft, or sonic architecture. How are we using different elements that might not seem normally like they fit together? How are we
mhm,
making them work together in a way that creates a mood, so that even if a person didn't understand English, which is the language I'm singing in on this record, even if a person doesn't like jazz and they might equate the trumpet with jazz, what kind of feelings come up for them? And so in 3 minutes and something seconds, just being able to create a painting that
mhm, mhm.
captures a story for the listener.
This is part of your forthcoming record. What is, so you said the title, you can mention the title again
The,
for the
the
listening
healing,
audience.
the healing suite.
The Healing Suite, and the release for that record would be when, like for the full album?
The full album will be released at the end of June. We haven't
Okay,
announced the
okay.
actual release date, a specific date, but it's the end of
Hmm.
June. We're projecting the third week of June for
Okay,
the release of the full album.
so you're doing like a what we call like a waterfall type thing leading into the release of the
Correct.
record. Okay,
Correct.
okay, great, great.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to jump into, and then we'll politic it out after. um, I want a little bit on your background. Like, what was the thing that got you into music initially, and then was it jazz right? Like, was it jazz from the inception, or did you like
Hmm.
generally get into music and then got sucked into the jazz world? What was the experience for you there?
Great question. So the first the first song that drew me in to want to play music was a
Hmm.
song by Paul McCartney. My mother had the
Mm.
45 at home. It was a song by his band Wings, which you would have to be of a certain age category to remember that band.
I
But
know, I know Wings.
but he had a song, Band on the Run. And
Okay.
it's a band on the run, band on the run. Da, 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 da. I don't remember all the words, but I remember the melody still. And it was that song. When my mother would play that song on this little
Hmm.
tiny record player, and I loved that song. And so, of course, I went down a rabbit hole. Man, who's this Paul McCartney guy? And then I see old pictures of Paul McCartney playing the bass, and I recognize that he's left-handed, just like me. But
Oh
he's not
wow.
playing the bass this way. He's
And the
playing the
other
bass
way.
this way. I said, "Wow,
Yeah.
he does what I do. What a coincidence!" Or he's left-handed like me. So I
Hmm.
really love that. But then I was 12, 13 years old. So I, of course, got into all the things that my peers were into.
Hmm.
And it was when I was about 16 years old that a mentor of mine introduced me to a recording, uh, Lush Life by Duke Ellington. And I
Mm.
heard, I
Okay.
heard
Okay.
this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful arrangement by who is still one of my favorite arrangers to this day, the great Billy Strayhorn, who was Duke Ellington's arranger. And I
Mm.
heard that, and I said, "Well, I don't really quite get it because I didn't get it, but it piqued my curiosity,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I started to go down the jazz rabbit hole. And back in
Mm.
those days, Samuel, you could still like go to the public library
Hmm.
and go to a listening station.
Ah.
So you
Okay.
know,
Okay.
I was 16. I didn't have any money. I couldn't buy records, but I would go to the listening station and
Hmm.
just get the recommendations from my music teachers and some of my older classmates who were already playing. and I
Hmm.
dove into jazz, but I was still loving hip hop. I'm a hip hop baby, so I was listening to KRS-One and listening to Boogie Down Productions and Poor Righteous
Oh my
Teachers
God.
and
Okay.
EPMD and uh,
Uh-huh.
all of the Zulu Nation artists like De La
Tribe.
Soul, Tribe Called Quest, and
Tribe. Okay.
so
Yeah.
I was listening to them, and my godmother was from Ghana, so she would introduce me
Mm.
to all of this music from throughout the African continent. The first record she ever gave me was a Miriam Makeba record uh,
Oh wow.
of a cappella vocals dedicated to her grandmother and her mother, who were sangomas, traditional Zulu healers. And so
Mm.
I listened to that record and I fell in love with South African music from throughout the West African part of the continent, and then jumped in, got so into it, I started playing percussion. So then I dove into percussion and almost stopped playing bass for a while. So that was my intro into the music world.
So I'll say you've been baptized.
I've been baptized. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, 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 you've been baptized. Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. So you said that what would you do is the second single, and the
Yes.
first single was which record?
So the first single is a song that I titled "Release,"
Okay.
and release came out in October
Hmm.
1st of last year, and
Okay.
just very grateful to announce that just made it to number one on the Urban Influencer Smooth Jazz charts as
Okay,
of
you gotta clap that
last
up. Yeah.
this past Monday. So I'm very grateful to the DJs and very grateful to everybody who has been instrumental in making that happen. Thank you so much.
Shout out to the Urban
So
Influencer crew.
yeah, shout out to Urban Influencer. I really appreciate you
Yes,
all, and
yes.
particularly when you look at that list, Samuel. And I'm looking at some of the names on that list, and I'm saying Mike Phillips. I'm number one, and Mike Phillips is on the chart. I'm number one, and Lynn Roundtree is on the chart. Wow,
Wow.
yeah, like mind blowing, right?
You
So
talking about
very
Mike Phillips on sax? That
yes,
Mike Phillips?
saxophone player, and Lynn Roundtree,
Yes,
is
yes,
amazing
yes,
trumpet,
yes,
amazing trumpet
yes,
player.
yes, yes, yes.
And Ben
Wow.
Tankard,
Well,
Ben Tankard is on the chart that as well, and Ben Tankard is a keyboard player, and so
oh yes, yes, yeah.
amazing musicians, and to be even on the chart with them is an honor. Forget about being at number one. So I'm very grateful.
All right, that's powerful, powerful, and congratulations there. So tell
Thank
us
you.
a little bit about, and I think this is probably what helped to fuel the direction of where your music is going in terms of the title of your album, the Healing Suite, right? That's
Yes,
the
yes,
Healing Suite.
yes.
So, which I get a spiritual philosophy vibe from you there. What Share a little bit of that with us,
Sure.
and maybe does that have anything to do with the name you have at this time, or was it a name
Well,
change,
this is
or
yeah. Well, this my name Heshima Moja. I mean, that's my government. If you look for me, you
hmm
know the
okay,
government looks for me.
just asking.
But no, it's okay because it's a great question. It makes sense, right? However,
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely, my name, which was given to me by my godmother, means
Hmm.
Heshima in Swahili means respect.
Mm.
Moja is from umoja, right? From the idea of
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
So my name means the respectful one. And so
Mm.
my godmother kind of spoke to me or spoke over me, uh,
Hmm.
and essentially said that my path in life would open up doors because of my ability to move in and out of different cultural groupings and appreciate and understand and respect different
Mm.
cultures. My talent would open the door, but then my connections with people would help to carry me around the world, that prophecy hasn't failed yet. So I'm really grateful
Mm.
to Umi for that. Yeah. So the healing
Amen.
suite
Hmm.
is really leaning into this idea that as I've shared with you earlier, Samuel, the before there was a music industry, before we
Mm-hmm.
had charts and Grammys, and before we had companies where people made lots of money off of art, our ancestors, no matter where they came from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter where they came from. Everybody has some type of heritage and some type of recollection of when their family members, their community members sat around the fires, danced
Mm-hmm.
around the circles, sat in people's houses, told stories. This may be really hard for people to believe in a time where real musical instruments aren't always seen. We have so much electronic
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a
Yeah.
time, Samuel, particularly in American history, where everybody had some type of musical instrument in their house, whether it was a violin, a fiddle, a piano, a guitar, a banjo, something,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
the centerpiece, the role of music as a grounding force for people, um, regardless of where they come from, can't really be overstated. And so the healing suite is asking us to look back at the traditional role that music holds in the lives of all um, older iterations of people's cultural heritages, right? So when we think about healing, I'm referring specifically to those practitioners, those musical
Mm-hmm.
practitioners, who some would call shamans, who some would call priests, who some would call healers, right? There's lots of names for it, but people who had a particular knowledge or were given a set of gifts by the
Mm-hmm.
divine,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yes.
however one wants to think about that, right? Um, in order to be able to address people's mental, emotional, spiritual, physical ailments or disorder or dysfunction or disharmony.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so, my old percussion teachers used to tell me the stories of getting called at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because so and so had was in psychological distress, and they
Mm-hmm.
knew, they had the knowledge that if I hit this tone on the drum, it's going to affect this part of the body. If I hit this tone on the drum, it's going to affect this part of the body, so on and so forth. So if I play this rhythm with this combination of particular tones, it's going
Mm-hmm.
to reestablish harmony and balance in the body. Singing,
Mm.
the first instrument, the voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
The word,
Yes.
word power. Whether we're talking about the power of life and death being in the tongue,
Yes.
or in the
Yes.
beginning was the word, right?
Yeah.
Or we're talking about the Zulu concept of word power, where
Mm.
it applies. So what we speak, how the tones that we use, the frequencies that we use,
Mm.
the frequencies that were the tones, the particular keys we're singing in, all correspond to particular organs in the body. The heart vibrates at a particular frequency, the brain vibrates at a particular frequency, the kidneys, the
Mm-hmm.
liver, etc., etc. Music, in the esoteric approach, whether we're talking about biblical culture, ancient Indian culture,
Mm-hmm.
various cultures throughout the African continent, etc., there
Mm-hmm.
is knowledge of how to use music, that when people are out of balance, how music can return them to
Mm.
balance, to harmony. And so the healing suite, while it's not the type of healing album that you would hear on YouTube, it's not binaural beats. I love binaural beats, by the way, so no disrespect to binaural beats. I love them and I use them in my own life. But
Mm-hmm.
it's, how can a person who may not feel inclined to deal with that turn on an
Mm.
album like the Healing Suite after a hard day, or at lunchtime in the office? Maybe they run out to the car and they say, I need a break. And they turn on the
Mm-hmm.
Healing Suite, and the frequency of the words, the content, the lyrical content, the
Mm-hmm.
rhythms, the melodies, all are able to help a person return, from discord or disharmony back into harmony, back into alignment,
Mm, mm.
not with anything, and it's not woo woo. So I want to make
And
that
yeah,
clear.
yeah. I don't think
This
my
is not,
audience is that
yeah.
they're not
Well,
that gullible, I think.
right. I just always like to tell people that what I'm talking about is really just the science of sound, right?
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
because I respect all people's cultures and beliefs, I never want to get into centering maybe what I believe as the
Hmm,
absolute
hmm.
truth. So I lean into the science when I'm
Understood.
talking about these things, you know. But they
Hmm,
so that we can bring people back into alignment with themselves so that they can feel
mm,
like the stress, the electrical current that has been generated around their body by their brain and by their heart as electrical instruments, which can
hmm,
sometimes
hmm.
attract negative things and sometimes attract positive things. We can realign, and that's what the healing suite is.
Wow, that's amazing. So I'm going to be staying tuned for when that record is about to be released.
Please,
So before you go, because I'm looking at our time,
sure.
um, and that was question number three.
3 or 4, something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, this is deep. This is deep. So I want to personalize. I always personalize my guests. Sorry.
Sure, sure.
So I asked them three simple questions. Some people feel violated when I ask the questions, but I don't think you'll have a problem at all. So, what is your favorite color?
Red.
Red. Interesting. Now, and why I'm saying that it's interesting. When you came on the studio, when you came into the studio, I had green
Uh-huh.
for our words, right? The ticker and our names are
The
in
ticker.
green,
Yeah.
and before we went, I just changed it to red. That's strange, right? So
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so
yeah.
oh, okay, red. Wow, the spirit is
Yeah.
working.
The spirit is working. Always.
Uh, All right, so let me jump to the other question real quick. When you're in the kitchen, what do you like to prepare?
Ah.
Mm,
Hmm. My
okay, got to
favorite
think on
food, my favorite food, honestly, is mango, which is a Dominican dish. So
mango. Okay.
mango is mashed plantains with butter and garlic, and we make it. It almost look like a mashed potato. Um,
Okay. Okay.
and then we put onion, which is kind of uh, cooked in vinegar, right?
Mm-hmm.
A
It's
little
just kind of
onion,
pickled.
like a pickled onion, and
It's like
then
yeah.
yeah, and then we put a fried egg on the top of it and some fried cheese on the top of it. That's it's usually a breakfast food in
Okay.
the Caribbean, in the Spanish
Uh,
speaking Caribbean.
okay.
Um, but
Okay.
my second favorite thing is Indian food. So pretty much, I'm always the house is always smelling like curry. The house is always smelling like 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 cumin, and red Indian chili pepper, which is where the Scotch bonnet pepper comes from. It made its way to Jamaica from India.
So you're a spicy guy, huh?
Absolutely, I love spicy food.
Okay. Okay. I wasn't expecting that at all. but
See,
but
I'm
that's
full of
good.
surprises.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Plus, I'm
So
keeping my answers short.
yeah. Yeah. You are. And give us like two or three people you listen to in the last week or so, like artists.
John Baptiste is in constant rotation on my phone and my computer and John Baptiste,
The
absolutely.
the, the trumpeter.
No, John
No, it's
Baptiste, the piano player, singer, composer.
okay. Okay. No, I'm mixing him up with somebody else. There's another
Yeah,
Baptiste that plays. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
John
So
Baptiste.
John Baptiste is one.
Hmm.
Um, I am a huge fan of a pianist from South Africa. His name was Duduzo Makatini.
Oh wow.
Amazing, amazing jazz piano player,
Okay.
who pretty much Blue Note Records has pretty much shaped the South African division of their record label around Duduzo Makatini. He's an
Okay.
amazing piano player, kind of in the tradition of McCoy Tyner, and kind of
Hmm.
definitely influenced by Mbeki Seleku, who was another great South African pianist.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I listened to him quite frequently, and this week was no exception. And
Okay.
then, and then I've been listening, going back and listening to a lot of Michelle Ndegeocello again. I absolutely adore Michelle
Okay.
Ndegeocello's music. She's a fabulous
Hmm.
writer, amazing bass player, amazing human.
Mm.
So she's an
And
inspiration for me.
she just dropped a new record too.
She did.
I
Yeah,
think she
yeah,
just yeah, she just dropped a new record.
yeah.
Shout out to the artists that you mentioned. I have to do some research after this interview here
I'll send
today.
you the names, especially Duduzo's spelling, right? So you can get the.
Yeah, yeah. Please help me out with that. And before you go, is there anything you wanted the audience to know that I didn't get a chance to ask you?
Well, I would just say this. I would love for you all, when you're listening to music,
Hmm.
to allow yourself to really connect with the music in a way where where you feel like you're connecting directly with the artist who created the music, because we put
Hmm.
our heart and our soul into whatever we're creating, and we're doing it for the purpose of uplifting, inspiring, whatever the motive of
Hmm.
the particular creator is. But I would love, and I think the highest compliment from me would be that if a person said, I felt like Heshima understood me when he wrote this piece of music or sang this lyric or did this.
Hmm.
And so that type of connection with music is the way that I grew up, and it's what inspired me. Laying on the floor in my parents' house with my big Radio Shack headphones and listening to records, LPs, and feeling like, wow, I want to get into that artist's headspace. I want to understand. And so we don't always engage with music that way now because we're so busy. But I would
Mm.
invite everybody to give yourself the gift, at least a half an hour a day, of saying the phone is off, the kids are asleep, the dishes are washed. I'm going to sit for 1/2 hour, turn off the boob tube for a little while, and just engage with something that was created with so much love and so much dedication, and with the intention of touching people. And I think that you'll start to have a different experience with music once again.
Mm. All right. Well, Mr. Heshima Moja, we want to thank you. Thank you for this interview. This was amazing. I learned so much in this hour and whatever we hooked up today, and definitely blessings on your journey as to whatever it
Thank you.
is you got to do next. And we have to do this again. So
Oh,
so when
I'm
yes,
always
when
down.
you yes, be sure to, if if you can't find me, just touch base with James and say, James, the record is about to drop. We got to get Sam on here.
Will do. Will do. Will do.
All
Absolutely.
right, make it a great day.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. You're welcome.